Welcome to In Dark Places. Think outside the bun. We got a fun little show planned for you this week. We're going to take a road trip into the unknown. First stop, the state of Illinois. You know, it's kind of sad how addicted we are to our technology. I went to work today and I forgot to leave my phone at the house. At the store where I work, it gets pretty slow this time of year. I'm a meat cutter, and we don't cut a lot of meat this time of year. There's not a lot of people grilling right now in the middle of January. And especially now because we just had a big blizzard. So there's even less people shopping because they don't want to get out in that snow. So it wasn't really the snow like we had when we were growing up, though. It's the fake government issued snow. But still, it was enough to keep people home. So it was a long, boring day at work. Okay, let's rock. Here's my friend Jimmy Haunted with the news.
Roll another blunt. This is Mr. Haunted with your In Dark Places breaking news. Man arrested after his mom accidentally served pot brownies to senior citizens. Police received several calls about possible poisonings involving seniors who attended a card game at the South Dakota Community Center. A South Dakota man is facing a felony drug charge after his mother unknowingly served his marijuana-laced brownies to a group of seniors at a local community center, according to officials. Thank you, officials. The 46-year-old man is charged with possession of a controlled drug or substance, a felony that carries a maximum sentence of 5 years in prison and a $10,000 fine upon conviction. He declined an NBC News request for comment Thursday afternoon. Recreational marijuana remains illegal in South Dakota after its Supreme Court last year struck down a voter-passed measure to legalize it. A report from Bon Homme County Deputy Sheriff Joel Newman says dispatchers received several calls on January 4th about possible poisonings. All the calls involved seniors who had earlier been at a Tabor Community Center card game. An investigation into the incident led Newman to believe that the patients were all under the influence of THC, the compound in cannabis that produces the high sensation, and the THC came from a batch of brownies brought by a woman to the community center. Two seniors who ate the brownies identified the woman who brought them. The woman told Sheriff Mark Maggs that her son had baked the brownies she bought to the card game, according to the affidavit. The woman gave Maggs the remainder of the brownies at her home. Officials said the son admitted bringing some THC butter back from a recent visit to Colorado, where recreational marijuana is legal for people 21 and older, and using it to make the brownies. He was arrested and released on an unsecured bond of $3,000, all on account of the happy seniors laughing and having a good time and eating all the community center snacks and pizza bites. And that's your breaking news this week. Because I got high. La, la, da, da, da. I was gonna make love to you, but then I got high. I'm serious. I was gonna eat.
UFO spotter makes sighting in Earth's orbit that's 100% proof, by John Bett. Thanks, John. He's with the Daily Mirror. A UFO spotter says he's found 100% proof that aliens are watching over Earth after a picture of the International Space Station was shared online. Scott Waring is a space buff and runs the website UFO Sightings Daily, and there he shared a blown-up version of the image where you could see a reddish object that he claims is an alien spacecraft. He said that after careful analysis, he was sure it wasn't the moon, and whatever it was much, much larger than the ISS in the foreground, as the Daily Star reports. Thanks, Daily Star. Scott said that he monitors the space station's live stream and has done so for the past 6 years. so he knows a rare sighting when he sees one. Publishing his findings on Wednesday, stunned Scott said, "Watch this live space station footage taken today, and you will see a close-up of a huge spear UFO rising up in Earth's orbit. It's not the moon. The moon is 5 times bigger and bright. This object is much smaller, oval in shape, and has some unique red and green colors to it." The teacher from Taiwan believes there is no other explanation from what was picked up on camera other than an extraterrestrial controlled spaceship. He recently thanked his audience for donating to his fundraiser so he could afford a brand new computer capable of meeting his UFO detective demands. Good to know. This week we're kicking off another new series that we hope to do many parts of. This is our road trip into the unknown. And the first stop of this trip will be in Illinois. Illinois became the 21st state of the United States in 1818. In 1955, it adopted the slogan of Land of Lincoln. After reading some of these stories, I think they should rename the slogan to Land of Whoa, or Land of Dude, or maybe Land of Scary, or, something else.
Hello, In Dark Places listeners. Let's take a walk into the Congress Hotel, where it seems Al Capone is still a resident. Congress Plaza Hotel is located on 520 South Michigan Avenue, and to this very day, the patrons of the 122-year-old 871-room hotel have reported seeing the ghost of Al Capone walk the halls. In 2016, Leisure and Travel magazine declared the Congress Plaza Hotel the most haunted place in the state of Illinois, noting that Capone set up his headquarters here and his ghost is most frequently seen near his old suite on the 8th floor. Capone isn't the only ghost taking up residence at the hotel, however. Our favorite phantom is the lovable Peg Leg Johnny. Little is known about this spooky hobo ghost, but the internet tells us that the incorrigible spirit has an urge to turn room lights on and off, electronics on and off, and generally causes havoc for guests. However, ghost experts report that the hotel's most haunted spot is room 441, where a female ghost reportedly kicks guests awake from the foot of the bed. As you can imagine, it's a frequently requested reservation. People want to get kicked from the bed. Not to be outdone, the ghost of a boy also reportedly haunts the Congress. Lore contends that his mother, distraught over her immigrant status, became increasingly troubled and threw both her children from a hotel window in despair, jumping out herself straight afterwards. The boy's ghost, like Peg Leg Johnny, causes mischief, but his shenanigans are largely limited to rearranging furniture and the like. That's obnoxious but forgivable, right? While the Congress Plaza is clearly teeming with apparitions, the hotel's most enduring creepy legacy perhaps is connected to one of its real-life patrons, America's first serial killer, Dr. H.H. Holmes. Holmes is known to have loitered around the hotel lobby in search of new victims. He was remembered most recently in the book Devil in the White City, where a retelling of Holmes' story reveals that the psychopath would lure young women back to his pharmacy in a hidden torture chamber. So that's the Congress Hotel.
The Airtight Bridge murder in Coles County. The Airtight Bridge hangs over the Embarrass River. It's very embarrassing in this rural region of Illinois. It used to be a popular spot for teens to get together to drink. In October 1980, two Urbana men discovered the naked body of a woman near the bridge. She was missing her head, hands, and feet. While a full investigation was conducted, no killer was ever found. Fortunately, a major break in this case in 1992 allowed the local sheriff's department to identify the woman, who was a Bradley, Illinois resident. Her tombstone now displays her name in Charleston's Mound Cemetery. Mystery of the Albino Railroad Tracks in St. Clair County. When this railroad was laid back in the 1800s, a disease also tore through the neighboring town. One farmer blamed this pandemic on a pair of young albino twins. He took the children and tied them to the tracks, where a train struck and killed the twins. The ghosts of these twins have been said to push non-working or stalled vehicles over the tracks to save drivers' lives.
While in dark places in Illinois, we took a little stroll to the Milton Schoolhouse, located in Alton, Illinois. Milton School was an elementary school which is now closed, parts of which date back to 1912, and it consists of an impressive 85,000 square feet. There's stories about a murder of a little girl named Mary who was attacked and murdered by an evil janitor who committed suicide before they could catch him, although he left a note behind confessing to the crime. The school has reported voices, footsteps, door activity, opening and closing, and several instances of apparitions, as well as people seeing faces in the windows. People say that some eerie things happened here, including objects disappearing, shadowy figures, footsteps, and unexplained sounds. A young girl's apparition has also been seen, and one worker complained of when she comes in the morning, there's X's and O's written on her computer screen on the worker's keyboard. So, is that the work of the spirit during the previous nights? We don't know. But this one's called the Milton School in Alton, Illinois.
Burroughs' findings in Richland County. In 1982, Russell Burroughs discovered a cave near his hometown of Olney. What he discovered in the cave was truly astonishing. Along with human remains, he also found gold artifacts that contained Egyptian, Greek, Middle Eastern, and other European words and etchings. Of course, Burroughs refused to show scientists where he found these awesome finds, and unfortunately, the artifacts were said to be frauds. But until the cave is unearthed, we will never really know for certain. The Burton Cave in Quincy. In the late 1800s, a group of friends were picnicking near the cave when a storm sent them running into the cave for refuge. There, they reported seeing a man dressed in a long, draping black robe, and a dead woman all in white laid out among candles at a funeral. You better believe they immediately rushed out of there and reported their findings to the Quincy authorities, who ventured out the next day and found no trace of the robed man or the dead woman. Of course, they waited until the next day.
Let's take a trip past Alton, Illinois, to the McPike Mansion. The McPike Mansion, a beautiful 16-room house sitting on 15 acres of overgrown land, has been vacant for more than 60 years, and maybe for good reason. Multiple ghastly figures, orbs, strange noises. Okay. I get the ghastly figures and strange noises, but I'm not, I never heard anybody say, "Oh my goodness, it's an orb! Run for your lives!" I need a nap. So they had some ghastly figures, orbs, strange noises, unexplained happenings, have been documented over its almost 150 years of existence. Many people believe that the ghosts of former owners of the house and their servants still walk the grounds and inside the house's dilapidated halls. The McPike Mansion was built in 1869 for Henry Guest McPike, a businessman and one-time mayor of Alton. McPike was also a skilled horticulturist, and during his time on the grounds, he perfected his own type of grape. How do you like that? The McPike family lived in the house until 1936 and has sat vacant till the 50s. The house also features gnarled oak trees, a menacing wrought iron fence encircling the property, and its very own graveyard. Spooky! Ooh. Many people, including the current owners of the house, believe the house is haunted. Sharon Ludke, one of the current owners, contends that she's seen several ghostly figures multiple times during visits. Sharon says she was working in the garden when she saw the ghost of Paul Laschinger, a subsequent owner of the house after the McPikes, standing by a window in the house. He was wearing the same exact outfit as one that he was wearing in a portrait that Sharon has of him. Sharon says that since then, she's had many run-ins with ghosts. She says she was hugged by a spirit of Sarah, a former servant at the estate. Other people have seen figures or ghostly orbs in the house as well. The wine cellar is said to be the most haunted location of the whole property. Footsteps and voices have been heard, and the heavy metal door that leads to the cellar has been seen moving on its own volition. A strange, unexplainable mist has even been reported following guests as they move through the cellar. The house has been featured on multiple shows about ghosts and haunted places and has been explored by many paranormal experts. The current owners of the house also give ghost tours to anyone fearless enough to visit. That's the McPike Mansion in Alton, Illinois.
Watseka Position in Watseka. A 13-year-old Watseka resident named Laurency Venom found herself the center of a spiritual possession in the late 1800s. She would slip into and right back out of short comas and awake to tell people that she had communicated with people in heaven. Her parents sought professional help from Dr. E. Winchester Stevens. When he asked her to let a spirit take control of her body, she awoke, telling everyone she was Mary Rolfe, a woman from Watseka who had died in a mental hospital when Laurency was only a child. Laurency had personal and specific knowledge of Mary Rolfe's life to which she would never have had access. The Mystery of Diamond Island in Hardin, Illinois. It was 1885, and two local men went out fishing along the river on a small island near the rural town of Hardin. At midnight, they reported seeing a bright fireball that shot through the trees and into the air, where it hovered. When the town got word of this weird phenomenon, a local gathering went out to Diamond Island to see for themselves. It didn't take long for them to witness the whole island immersed in glowing light. A flaming ball rose out of the trees and into the air, where it landed in one of their boats, pushing it out into the river. Within the flames, the ghost hunting team said they saw an old man in overalls standing on the boat as it was carried away. After a few more months of fiery terror in this small town, the Hardin monster was never seen or heard from again.
Cemetery, also known as Moon Creek Cemetery, is older than the Civil War and legendary with those who like to tell ghost stories. It was thought to have begun as a family cemetery for early settlers. Jacob Moon and his family. The cemetery's most talked about ghost is called the Hatchet Lady, a female apparition of a woman who, as legend has it, often visited the cemetery to watch over her son's grave after he died during the Civil War. When she died, her ghost took up the vigil carrying a hatchet. She has been heard yelling or whispering earnestly at visitors to get out. Other reports say a ghost boy and strange dancing lights, along with red and white orbs, appear here and in the surrounding areas. The sound of sarcophagus lids moving and other strange noises have been reported as well. Because of vandalism, local residents and police take great care to prevent people from trespassing at night when the cemetery is closed to visitors. And here's a couple comments under the story here. My sister's best friend and I all went when I was 18 years old, and we all heard different things, but the freakish part was it was told that a train would come across the path and trap you in there, and a train did come. Let's say we hightailed it out of there. I also saw blue lights dancing around. It was definitely weird. Then we have a story about a phantom train. My friends and I used to go there in the mid-90s. The experiences I had there made me a believer. Unexplained noises and voices, shadow people, and a train that you can't see. The train crossing arm came down and the lights flashed. We know we heard a train traveling on the tracks, but couldn't see one. No one would cross them to see. We were all terrified. Anyway, so Moon Point Cemetery, or Moon Creek Cemetery, is located in Streator, Illinois. That's called the Hatchet Lady of Moon Point Cemetery.
John Doe, number 24, Jacksonville, Illinois. In Jacksonville, in 1945, police found an unidentified teenager who was deaf and mute wandering around the town. No parents claimed him, so he was sent to a state mental health facility. His medical records stated that diabetes had taken his eyesight and that he was severely mentally challenged. But the nursing home in Peoria, where he spent the last 6 years of his life, reported John Doe scribbling down the name Lewis on multiple occasions, as well as physically reenacting experiences with circus parades and lively foot-tapping jazz bars. While no one will ever know the potentially amazing life this John Doe had experienced as a youngster, you can now visit his gravestone, which was purchased by the famous singer Mary Chapin Carpenter. The Max Headroom broadcast hijack in Chicago. It's November 22nd, 1987. The Chicago Bears have just beat the Detroit Lions 30-10. And then suddenly the screen goes black, and then a man appears wearing a Max Headroom mask and sunglasses. He shuffles around on screen before the frequency is quickly changed. Later that night, while viewers were enjoying Doctor Who, WTTW's signal was hijacked once more. The same Max Headroom hijacker spouted weird statements about freaking liberals and talking about a blood-stained glove. He even went so far as to be spanked on public television. The hijacking was over before anyone at WTTW could figure out what was going on. Fortunately, Doctor Who fans were taping the episode, so that others can now experience the weirdness firsthand.
While the Congress Plaza Hotel reigns supreme in the world of Chicago's haunted hotels, The Drake Hotel, that's located on 140 East Walton Place, is a strong second. The ghost of the famed Lady in Red still creeps around the hotel nearly 100 years after her tragic death on New Year's Eve. The legend goes that the crimson-adorned woman discovered her lover, or in some reports her husband, with another woman during a gala attended by the city's elite, prompting her to jump from the window on the 10th floor. She has since been roaming the hallways and is most commonly witnessed on the 10th floor in the sumptuous Palm Court, no doubt drawn by all those high tea aficionados. There's also the case of the woman in black who murdered socialite Adele Bourne Williams in 1944. Williams was a guest at the hotel, as the story goes, and entered her room to discover the woman in black, who pulled a gun from her purse and shot Williams dead. Dead, dead, dead. The case was big news at the time, but was never solved. Perhaps the most poignant ghosts, however, are those of the parents of Bobby Franks. Little Bobby Franks was kidnapped and murdered by his cousin Richard Loeb and his accomplice Nathan Leopold in 1924. The two said they did it for the thrill of it. It was the court case of the century, and reports at the time noted that the Franks family left their home to avoid gawkers, looky-loos, nosy parkers, moving to the Drake Hotel, where they spent the rest of their days. They remain there in the afterlife, it seems, and have been witnessed wandering the hotel, mourning their murdered son. And that does it for the Drake Hotel.
The Grass Lake Encounter. For those UFO lovers out there, this story is for you. In 1973, this small farming town that sits on the Illinois-Wisconsin border reported orange UFOs in the night sky. These nightly UFO sightings were documented by at least 3 local families, who also reported experiencing disturbing poltergeist activity shortly after. They found visible claw marks, furniture knocked over in the homes, and they even felt their houses bouncing around and shaking from the very foundation. Even sightings of creepy Bigfoot-like humanoids were experienced in these homes. So yeah, I'm going there. Count me in. The Mag Gasser of Mattoon in Mattoon, Illinois. Back in the 1940s, a small Illinois town fell victim to someone or something that was emitting poisonous gases into people's homes. In some cases, the gasser even made barricades to prevent the victims from escaping. People reported sore throats and nausea, and some people swore they even saw someone moving around outside their homes at the time. While some theories point to an angry local medical student, they have never discovered who led this little hamlet into mass hysteria. Weirdly enough, the same gassing scenario had happened a few years prior in Virginia.
It seems Chicago has its own Titanic-like disaster. This one's called the Ghosts of the Eastland Disaster. On July 24th, 1915, the SS Eastland was parked along the Chicago River downtown. The steamship was supposed to be carrying passengers to an annual picnic for the Western Electric Company located in Cicero. The steamship was set to head east along the Chicago River to Lake Michigan and then south to Michigan City, Indiana. The Eastland was the first boat leaving that morning. Its capacity was about 2,300 people, though it was not clear how many were actually on board that day. Tony Sabelski of Chicago Hauntings Ghost Tours says it could have been more than 3,000 people. Everyone wanted to go out on the Eastland because it was the first ship scheduled to go out that day. Author Jay Banansinga told CBS, it was such a freak accident, nobody expected this giant 300-foot steel ship to go over. With an excess of people on board moving around the vessel, the boat tipped over while still docked, trapping hundreds of people under the waterline. It's not clear what happened, but when the vessel tipped, 844 people lost their lives, including 22 entire families. A lot of people report to this day that from the restaurants along the river or looking down from the Clark Street Bridge, you'll still see the images, faces of people floating in the water or hands reaching up for safety. There are even police reports of people who look into the water from a riverfront restaurant at night. The witnesses think they see someone drowning in the river and they'll call police, but when police arrive, they'll find nobody. Near the site of the disaster, the Reed Murdoch Company building, with its grand clock tower on LaSalle Street, which was built as an office building and grocery warehouse, later housed Chicago municipal offices for many years. It is also considered to be haunted. Numerous makeshift morgues were set up after the Eastland disaster, and one of them was in this building. When you get so many people dying in such a short amount of time, the downtown morgues do not have the space to hold all these bodies. So people who work in this Reed Murdoch building, especially after hours, report seeing shadow figures moving down the hallways. They will also hear sounds coming from rooms above them where nobody should be, and they report seeing lights flickering on and off, doors slowly creaking open and slamming shut. But the Reed Murdoch building was not the primary building pressed into service as a temporary morgue. That duty went to the 2nd Regiment Armory at 110 North Carpenter Street at Washington Boulevard in the West Loop. The 2nd Regiment Armory later became Harpo Studios, where Oprah Winfrey taped her talk show for many years. Initially, Winfrey said she didn't know the history of the building, but a lot of her staff, herself included, would claim to have a lot of experiences there. They would hear such sounds as ghostly children playing up and down the hallways of the building, and there was one woman's restroom where they could hear the sound of a woman sobbing. The night watchman at the building would also hear crashing sounds, but investigation into the origins of the crash would turn up nothing. Security cameras at the building also captured what looked like a woman in an old-time gray dress, and Winfrey nicknamed the woman the Gray Lady. She did several episodes of her show dedicated to the Eastland disaster and its victims. The building was later demolished to make way for the new McDonald's corporate headquarters. Now that is a McTravesty.
Back on episode 25, we talked about our friend the Mothman and how he has taken up residence in Chicago. A first cousin of the Mothman could very well be the Thunderbird, and this is the mythic child-stealing Thunderbirds of Illinois. The evening of July 25th, 1977, was just like any other hot summer evening for the Lowe family of Lawndale, Illinois. The smell of sizzling beef and grilled vegetables permeated the air as the adults kicked back on lawn chairs and the kids tussled on the family's expansive yard outside. The following is Ruth Lowe's harrowing eyewitness account of a particularly frightening avian encounter, as written by Jerry D. Coleman. Thanks, Jerry. From cryptozoology.com. At approximately 8:10 p.m., the Lowes were cleaning up after their alfresco dinner. The kids were still playing outside, and that's when it happened. Ruth, the matriarch of the Lowe clan, was cleaning up in the kitchen where she couldn't see her children. She heard a piercing scream and knew it was none other than her 10-year-old son, Marlon. She ran outside to see what the commotion was. She was stunned. Two massive birds flying in a tight wingtip-to-wingtip formation were chasing her son Marlin, pecking and clawing at his shoulders. As Ruth ran to Marlin's aid, the larger of the two birds sunk its claws into his shirt, fully lifting the 56-pound boy off the ground. But the birds were no match for a defensive mother. Ruth kept attacking the bird, and it dropped her now terrified son to the ground, after carrying him a distance of over 35 feet. When the Lows went to the police, they were laughed out of the precinct. One of the cops allegedly said to Ruth, "Now let me get this straight. A giant bird attacked your nephew." In her statement to the police, Ruth described the bird as such. It had a white ring around its half-foot-long neck. The rest of the body was very black. The bird's bill was 6 inches in length and hooked at the end. The claws on the feet were arranged with 3 front, 1 in the back. Each wing, less the body, was 4 feet at the very least. The entire length of the bird's body, from beak to tail feather, was approximately 4.5 feet. Obviously, as with any eyewitness account of cryptids, Ruth and Marlin Lowe's story was met with a healthy dose of skepticism and even ridicule. As their story was circulated around the local press, Marlin became known to his schoolmates as Bird Boy, and dead pigeons were tossed onto the Lowe family's porch. Had Ruth not come outside at that very moment, she was sure the bird would have carried her son away.
While we're in Illinois, let's take a little stroll to the Lincoln Square Theater. The Lincoln Square Theater, located on North Main Street in downtown Decatur, is one of only 2 of the city's grand theaters that remain standing today. It opened in 1916 with a large seating capacity and a sprawling stage. It was a labyrinth and remains so today, with its mezzanine, high balcony, basements, and subcellars. The theater holds many secrets and, according to some, many ghosts. The theater was not the first building to stand on the site that it now occupies in downtown Decatur. Aside from frontier construction by the early settlers, the first real building on the site was the Priest Hotel. W.S. Chrissy opened it on the northwest corner of the old square in 1860. Although it was completed and operated for many years by Franklin Priest, in 1880, Riley Deming took over the establishment and changed its name to the New Deming. It was later purchased by Augustine Waite, and in 1892, he changed the name to the Arcade Hotel. 8 years later, he would remodel, expand, and call it the Decatur and Arcade Hotel. There was a horrible fire there in 1904, which destroyed the building, but it was rebuilt on the same site a short time later. It was in 1815, however, when disaster struck. On April 21st, 1915, a spectacular fire broke out and destroyed the hotel, claiming 2 lives and damaging several of the surrounding structures. The blaze was believed to have started because of some oily rags that were left near the hotel's boiler. A night watchman discovered them smoldering and tried to put them out, but was driven back by thick smoke that began churning from the refuse. The blaze quickly spread, and while all of the fire equipment in the city arrived on the scene within minutes, smoke was soon billowing through the lower windows. Water began to be pumped from the trucks, but because of the smoke was just too thick to enter the basement. The firefighters had no idea of the exact location of the fire. It was said that a roar came up from the crowd assembled in Lincoln Square when the first flames arrived. The Decatur and Arcade Hotel burned to the ground in April 1915, leaving lingering spirits behind in the ashes. The fire came from the rear of the hotel and could be seen glowing through the front doors. The firemen began dragging hoses into the building, but within 10 minutes, men had to turn their attentions to the other buildings nearby, as there was no hope for the hotel. The nearby structures, including the Bachman Brothers and Martin Company Furniture Store, The YMCA, the First Presbyterian Church, and an Oddfellows building were saved. But as the north wall of the 7-story arcade building collapsed, it struck the Bachman Brothers warehouse with a tremendous crash and a loud explosion. The furniture store was saved from heavier losses thanks to a heavy firewall that refused to give in and a new sprinkler system. The 2 men killed in the fire were William E. Graham, an engineer for the Decatur Bridge Company, and C.S. Guild, a traveling salesman from Lockport, New York. The bodies were found in the ruins, although several other hotel guests were never found. Whether or not they escaped from the inferno is unknown. What is known is that the disaster could have been much worse. If it had not been raining before the fire broke out, it's possible that the entire west part of downtown, including many homes, could have been destroyed. The hotel was never rebuilt, and the Lincoln Theater took the other building's place. Many have pondered the question as to whether or not the spirits of the people killed in the hotel fire might walk in the dark corners of the Lincoln Theater. It now stands directly on the location of the former hotel, and many have speculated that the ghosts could have passed into the new building and may have took up residence there. And there's also stories about a former theater worker named Red. He is one of the friendly ghosts that reside there. Witnesses have claimed to hear whispers and have seen his shadowy figure. He has been appeared walking around the stage area. There's also a female spirit reported there, and this theater was featured on an episode of TV's Most Terrifying Places in America. And that's called the Lincoln Square Theater story. Just taking a leisurely stroll through the lobby area, along with you guys.
The most haunted cemetery in America is said to be the abandoned Bachelor's Grove Cemetery on the outskirts of Chicago, hidden in the woods. It was once a popular hangout for bored teenagers. They apparently were not alone, coming home with tales of vanishing cars and a vanishing house, blue and red spook lights, trees that shook when there was no wind, a variety of ghosts, and a 2-headed man who was sometimes seen swimming in a cemetery pond. The cemetery is still here, and so, supposedly, are the ghosts. The teens have moved on. It's a shame. I was going to go check them out. Showman's Rest in Forest Park. Showman's Rest is a section of Woodlawn Cemetery where remains from a 1918 circus train wreck were buried in a mass grave. Between 60 and 110 employees were killed when another train conductor fell asleep, causing his train to strike the circus train. Many of the victims' names were not known, so some of the markers say things like unidentified male, or baldy, or 4-horse driver. Today, the section is still used for burials of circus showmen. The cemetery is rumored to be haunted. Locals say the sound of phantom elephants can be heard at night. Ramsey Cemetery. Established in 1851 with the burial of namesake Alexander Ramsey. It's also known as Caspar Cemetery and is a nighttime teen hangout. Besides the graves, rock shelters and sandstone caves are nearby, covered with carvings from its many visitors. A young man committed suicide inside a chapel that stood in the cemetery from the 1920s till the 1960s. The chapel has since been demolished. Among the many legends here is the story of a man in a black cloak with glowing red eyes, who is a manifestation resulting from occult activity that took place here in the past. Another legend tells of a werewolf that lives in the caves on the grounds. And yet another says Those who put a penny heads up on a tombstone will come back later to find it upside down.
Located right in the middle of Chicago, the Oriental Theater was built in 1926. However, before that, this area was just a simple piece of land that was home to the Iroquois Theater. This theater was built in the year 1903. This theater was said to be the best and be very elegant. It was reported that it cost over $1 million to build, and that would be about $30 million today. The newspapers advertised this theater as being fireproof. However, with history, we now know that bragging about something being fireproof or a ship being unsinkable is not something we should do. The theater was showing Mr. Bluebeard, which was a comedy musical from New York. It was about a man who had married a woman and murdered her. The man had proceeded to hide her body in the closet. The theater had sold out for the show on December 30th. All 1,700 seats were filled, plus there were a few hundred tickets that were sold for people to stand. Midway through the showing of the play, Mr. Bluebeard, a stage light had sparked. This spark flew onto the backdrops, which were extremely flammable. The backdrops had been set on fire. The crew that was working backstage did everything they could to put the flames, including using kill fire. This was a fire extinguisher that was in powder form. However, this would not work because they could not throw it into the flames because the flames were above them. At this point, the fire was spreading rapidly, and the audience soon realized something was very wrong. When the crowd panicked, Eddie Foy tried to calm the crowd down. He urged them to leave the building in an orderly fashion. Eddie Foy was a vaudeville actor and the star of the show. However, at this point, no one would listen to the star. People were rushing out of the seats. This did not do much good because they could not easily find any exits. The exits of the theater were not labeled. Plus, the doors had used what is known as a bascule lock, and these locks are popular in theaters in Europe, but not in Chicago. The people couldn't figure out how to unlock the doors to escape. The stage crew had attempted to lower an asbestos fire curtain. However, it became snagged on the lighting fixtures and could only lower halfway. The theater had a skylight that was designed to be opened if there was a fire. This was to be opened to allow the flames and smoke to travel up and away from those watching the play. However, no matter how hard the stage crew tried, the skylight would not open. It seemed nailed shut. The cast had opened the back door to escape, and at this time, a huge gust of cold air was let in. This cold air fed the flames and sent a fireball into the crowd. What a treat. The theater had an upper level. The people who were on this level seemed to have had worse luck than those who were on the main floor. The people on the upper level had tried to get down the main staircase. However, the main staircase that would lead to the lobby was locked. These doors were metal accordion doors. This was not unusual. People would be locked into their seats so they could not go to the lower level to have more expensive seats. Several people continued to search for a fire escape and found them. However, the escapes had been frozen and would not lower all the way down. It was at this time that people started jumping down to the brick alley below them. Many people died while jumping. However, the people who did survived because of the dead bodies cushioning their falls. Some people were able to crawl across the alley to safety as well. Tenants who were living on the other side of the building had noticed the rush and panic and grabbed a few ladders and 2x4s. They used these to help get the people that were stuck on fire escapes down. Some of the people made it out by crawling on these makeshift bridges. A few of them fell and died. Other people had the makeshift bridge slip, causing them to go into the alley below them. The fire had only lasted 30 minutes. However, 600 people lost their lives. The majority of the people were not in the building. The majority of them were outside the theater in the alley. Some reports stated that the bodies were piled about 6 feet high. Soon after the fire, recovery work had begun. The people who were burned in the fire were piled in the alley. After they were done removing the bodies, they were taken to several mortuaries to be identified. Because of the flames and those jumping and falling to their deaths, the alley was soon named the Alley of Death. The sight of all the corpses in the alley after the fire helped seal the deal on the name of the alley. However, since that day, there have been some paranormal and strange occurrences happening in that alleyway. Since the fire, it is said that many spirits are lingering. If you walk in the alley, you may notice a chilly breeze even on the warmest days. You may even hear someone whisper your name when you enter the alley. Some people report the feeling of hands on their shoulders. These hands are nowhere to be seen, and no one is around when the person feeling them turns around. People refer to these hands as phantom hands. So that's the story of the Oriental Iroquois Theater, also known as Death Alley.
The Massac Mausoleum stands in a small graveyard called the Lithuanian Liberty Cemetery, and it's the stuff of legends. Locals tell of a hatchet man. Maybe he's some kin to the hatchet lady. It's a scary ghost who guards the cemetery, and the mausoleum door is said to remain warm and has been sealed closed since the 1960s, when vandals stole a skull from inside. In Rosemary Ellen Galley's The Complete Vampire Companion, she tells about a pale, thin apparition seen here at night. According to the book, after hearing about the sightings, a reporter poured holy water into the mausoleum's vent and consequently heard an eerie groaning sound coming from the crypt. The area is reported to be closely patrolled by police, so don't even think about it. The Crom Family Cemetery in Collinsville. It's a small family cemetery, now hidden the trees just off Old Keebler Road, now hidden among the trees. It is all that remains of the Crom family mansion, which burned down long ago and was for decades considered to be haunted by the locals. Some enterprising explorers found leg shackles in the concrete walls of the ruined basement, leading to speculation that the house was once used as a holding pen for slaves about to be sold on the open market. Rumors began almost immediately about ghostly apparitions of slaves being seen walking at night from the ruins of the mansion down to the family cemetery. Resurrection Mary. One of Chicago's most famous ghost stories is that of Resurrection Mary. The legend goes that she was killed in a hit and run while walking home from a ball sometime in the 1920s. Ever since, the ghost of a young woman in a white gown has been seen by dozens of people along Archer Avenue. Generally, she tends to be walking down the side of the road, searching for a ride home. Those kind enough to pick up the stranded woman are surprised when she vanishes into thin air before reaching her destination. She's duped several cab drivers, and according to one man, she somehow got out of the car without ever opening the door. Resurrection Mary has also been spotted in popular dance halls in the South Side, and men who have danced with her usually noted her ice-cold hands. Resurrection Mary is so named for her connection to the nearby Resurrection Cemetery, where she is said to be buried. She often asks for a ride to or from the graveyard, promptly disappearing once she reaches her destination.
The Devil Baby of Hull House. The Devil Baby of Hull House is a disturbing and bizarre legend surrounding a monstrously deformed infant that was supposedly taken in at the infamous Hull House, a settlement house. The house was built by Charles Hull in 1856 in Chicago. Some manifestations: a devil-like face in an upstairs window, ghostly mists, and a monk-like figure on the staircase. In 1889, a social worker named Jane Addams opened the Hull House as a settlement house for women, the homeless, and recent immigrants. She provided education, food, and shelter for hundreds of people. In 1913, Addams took in a strange baby into the care of Hull House. Some versions of the story said the mother was an unwed immigrant, but most say that the parents were a devoutly Catholic wife and an atheist husband. The story goes that the atheist husband tore down a religious picture his wife had put up, saying he would rather have the devil in his house than any more religious artwork. The child born from the couple was said to possess pointed ears, cloven hooves, horns, scales, and even a pointed tail, all the markings of the devil. To this day, people passing by the Hull House report seeing a hideous, devil-like face staring at them from the upstairs window. Some say it's the child itself, while some say it's the ghost.
The Devil's Stone. In the mid-1970s, Gilbert and Trudy Woods unearthed a strange stone in their backyard that had odd etchings and symbols that included a serpent. Soon after, disturbing instances plagued them. Gilbert experienced a heart attack, and Trudy unexplainably went blind for 3 months and was later diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. Once this happened, they offered the stone to a friend who also experienced creepy happenings, lights that turned off and on by themselves, and bees that swarmed her home in the winter. Unfortunately, no one knows where that mysterious stone is today. And that's going to do it for our little road trip into the unknown. We really appreciate you guys listening. Anything you can do to share the news of the show to help us grow would be greatly appreciated. If you've got a story you'd like to tell and be a guest on our show, send an email to indarkplacespod@hotmail.com. We'll see you again right here next week. God bless you guys.
You know what? I'm going to add some commentary onto this one, and not to make light of it, but I guess it is. For some reason, I was always thinking in my head, there's a lot of theaters that had tragedy, especially fires. And I was thinking, all the popcorn kernels that they probably have stored in the back. I was always wondering if the fire ignited every single popcorn kernel, and they all popped. Would it fill the entire building and be coming out the doors and windows? And it was just an image I had in my head, and you can edit that out.
She would slip into and right back out of short commas. Short commas.
And I thought I had one more good comment here. No, I am mistaken. There's no more comments.